She could still...
You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
Well, welcome everybody to the Capitalist Corner. My boomerific co-host is on his phone, so I have to take the lead today. That's fine. I've got a great episode out for you literature lovers out there. Andy Bernstein and I did an episode on Wuthering Heights. The book is what we reviewed, and I think we did a pretty good job. In addition to that, remember, like, share, subscribe. Please. It helps with the algorithm. It does very well. There's a lot going on in the world. But before we get into that, I kind of want to share some stuff from Trump, because this is our commander-in-chief. So let's just check out. This is an interview yesterday. I don't know what Mark is doing. I'm going to mute him because he's making weird noises. And we're going to put on the brief clip of an interview with Dana Perino with the Trumpster.
It's alarming that we have not been able to see or hear from any of the Iranian people. And I imagine that is because their internet is shut down. And I think there is some general worry about them. Obviously, their government treats them terribly and killed tens of thousands of them in January. Like Kayleigh, I would never ask you to tell us something that is classified, but do you have any insight as to how they are doing? Do they have drinking water? Do they have food?
Right, I do.
It's upsetting.
I do. But first, you remember when we had lunch years ago in the base of Trump Tower when it was a brand new building?
It's a long time ago, yes.
A long time ago, and you haven't changed.
Oh.
You have not changed. Now, I'm not allowed to say this. It's the end of my political career, but you may be even better looking, okay? So I don't know what you're doing. But I will not say that.
Has a lot
I will
to do
not
with
say that because that will end my...
So Mark, I guess, cannot hear us for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing or what's wrong. But when I hear stuff like what the Trumpster just said, I find it a little disturbing. This is a serious issue. People are dying. I mean, death, the end of life. And this guy's joking about how good looking the interviewer is. I find it disturbing. I don't think that it sends a note of seriousness, or to use a word that's common in parlance in these issues, of gravitas. But let's see. Let's see what else the Trumpster has had to say of late.
Now I say it because no press ever reports it. I'm the only president that ever took a cognitive test. I took it 3 times. It's actually a very hard test for a lot of people. It wasn't hard for me, but it's a cognitive test. It starts off with an easy question, and by the time you get to the middle, it gets tougher. By the time you get to the end, very few people can answer those questions. They get very tough, mathematical.
Okay, the test that he's referring to is a dementia test. It's a dementia test. It's the Montreal something or other. Persephone, can you find out the name of the test? Just Google what is the name of the cognitive test that Trump is talking about. The mathematical question he's talking about is to count back by sevens from 100. So, 100, 93, 86, 79. That's the mathematical test. The mathematical portion that's very difficult and very few people can pass. So, I mean, I just had to mute Mark again. I'm sorry. But the president of the United States is bragging about passing a dementia test 3 times. Concerning? Well, to me, yes. Now, let's see what else he's had to say.
And it would be better. It would be better. See this pen right here? This pen is an interesting example. It's the same thing. So this pen is very inexpensive, but it writes well. I like it. But I can't have the pen the way it was. You know what it is. I don't want to give them too much publicity, but they do treat me well, Sharpie. So I came here, and they have $1,000 pens. And you know, you hand pens out, you're signing, and you hand them out, you're handing them to all these people. Sometimes you have 30, 40 people. And they were $1,000 a piece. Beautiful pen, ballpoint. 1,000. It was gold, silver, gorgeous. But I'm handing out to kids that don't even know what the hell. What is this, Mommy? It's kids. They're getting a pen for $1,000. They have no idea what it is. And I feel guilty because I'm like, you know, I'm by nature, I don't, you know, it's the government. I love the government like I love myself economically. I want to save money. So I'm saying, this is crazy. And it had another problem. They didn't write well. So I take it out and I sign, and there's no ink. And I got all you people looking, and you're saying, there must be something wrong with Trump. And I'm signing, and there's no ink in the pen, and it costs $1,000. This one, I called the guy. I said, I'd like to use your pen, but I can't have a gray thing with a big S on it saying Sharpie, as I'm signing a $1 trillion airplane contract.
All right. So it's a cabinet meeting, and he's talking about pens, and Hegseth is sitting next to him with the phony laugh. Anybody else find this disturbing? Because I do. You know, yes, taxpayer dollars paid for the pen ramble.
With NATO, because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said, 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics, and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours. And I want you to remember that we said this. They didn't come to our rescue.
Okay, so 25 years ago, it's March 27th, would have been March 27th, 2001. Following September 11th, 2001, Article 5 was invoked, and NATO actually did come to our aid. I believe they lost 1,100 people. You know, I don't know how many injured. So what the hell is this guy talking about? What is his object here? Is he just this ignorant? Is he a liar? I don't know, but it's ridiculous. Now let's hear his vice president.
So I think it's important the American people know options for what, and it's options to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. You talk about people who walk into a crowded supermarket and have a vest on, and they blow up the vest and a couple of people get killed, and that's a terrible tragedy. What happens when what's on the vest is not something that can kill a couple of people, but can kill many, many tens of thousands of people? That is the most important American national security objective that exists for any administration at any time, is you don't want the worst people in the world to have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president is doing this. That's why the president cares so much about this particular issue.
Okay, for the record, there is no such thing as a nuclear vest. None. It's not something that's in the making. It's not something that's very easy to do. This is just scaremongering. That's it. Nothing more. It's scaremongering from the vice president. Now, my problem, and this is always my problem, when somebody says something to me, if I'm just in a casual conversation with somebody and they start saying things that I know aren't true, I doubt the things that they're saying that I don't know. So none of us, you, me, the audience, has access to the actual intelligence on these things. We don't have, we have to go by what others tell us. We have no choice. So we either have to rely on the media, we can rely on the administration, maybe people in Congress, whatever. But if they're going to feed us BS, like, for instance, saying that, 25 years ago, NATO wouldn't come to our aid, or, we have to worry about nuclear vests. I know he didn't use the term nuclear vest, but the context makes it clear. Then what are they deceiving us about? What are they lying about? Now, Mark can't hear anything. Mark, there's something wrong with your phone. I don't know. Persephone, can you hear me? Okay, so the audience can hear me. That's what's important here. I don't know, Persephone, maybe you can give Mark some help on the side. She says she's trying, she's yelling, she's screaming. Now, the problem that I have here, I'm going to throw Persephone straight under the bus right now. She's going under, the tires are rolling over her. And I think maybe it's a little deserved. So this morning, I sent out my usual barrage of articles to both Persephone and Mark, but Persephone hasn't read them. So what am I supposed to do? Now, I guess I'm just going to go solo. All right. So from the Epoch Times, they're talking about, the Iranian war. And now Trump has extended. Remember, he was going to blow them to smithereens. He was going to destroy their energy infrastructure if they didn't open the Straits of Hormuz. But then he came out and he said, I'm going to extend it to 5 days. Well, now he says this, as per Iranian government request, please let this statement serve to represent I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's what he wrote yesterday in a post on Truth Social. He says talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, they are going very well. Not according to the Iranians. And then Trump says, they say, oh, we're not talking. They are begging to work out a deal. That's what he said in a cabinet meeting yesterday. So he is, going back on his ultimatums. He says he's doing so because, I want to find this here, what the Iranians have actually said. So the Iranians have said that, and Iran Military News posted to Twitter, X, contrary to Trump's claims, there are no negotiations between Iran and U.S., and the channels of exchange and messages are blocked. Iran considers even one-way exchange of messages detrimental to its war strategy. Trump has deliberately adopted a strategy of reckless lying. So here's the thing, in my view. Let's say that the Iranians are lying. If the Iranians are publicly lying, if the Iranians are claiming things that aren't true in relation to these negotiations, why are we extending the period of bombing, right? So if they're privately begging him, but then publicly saying this guy's a liar, why would we negotiate with such people? I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to negotiate with them to begin with, right? I mean, let's face it. They've lied in the past. They've attacked us in the past. They're not good people. I'm very confused by that. But either way, the bottom line is, why are we dealing with them? Trump says that they got to get serious about negotiations to end the war. And he's accusing them of falsely downplaying ongoing contacts. Again, they're begging us to make a deal. They want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it. Like, what? Because they fear internal backlash. And he says anybody would know they're talking. They're not fools. They're very smart, actually, in a certain way, he said. And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. So the prime minister, not the prime minister, who's this guy? He's the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, says messages being conveyed through our friendly countries and us responding by stating our positions or issuing the necessary warnings is not called negotiation or dialogue. So they're clearly saying they're not negotiating. I don't know what to make of any of this, to be honest. Trump, he says there does not need to be any more death and destruction. But if Iran fails to accept the reality of the current moment, oh no, this is Caroline Levitt. I'm sorry. President Trump will ensure they are hit harder than they ever have been before. Trump is prepared to unleash hell. But Iran says Iran will end the war when it decides to do so and when its own conditions are met. Okay, let's just give Trump the benefit of the doubt, which I don't like to do because he's a lying scumbag. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt for a second and say he's 100% telling the truth. Okay, dude, threat time should be done. They are clearly publicly saying they don't care about you. They're calling you a liar. They're saying that this war will end when they want it to end. They're posting things about how they're destroying ships, they're killing Americans and all that. Enough with the public posturing. It doesn't, if it's 4D chess, which is, everyone, he's doing it to confuse them. It doesn't look like they're confused, dude. If they are what we think they are not going to respond to your stupid ass public statements. So one of my concerns going in is that we will not, first of all, was Trump, who he is. Secondly, that we would not do what was necessary to win the war. So I tell you, I can guarantee you that talking about how they're begging to make a deal, that's not how you win a war. Not at all. So who prays for Satan? The lovely Persephone has given us 50, what are they called? Rands? 50 rands. She says the size of your success is measured by how you handle disappointment along the way. I don't really know how that's relevant to this discussion, but it is good, and we welcome super chats, super stickers, the whole kit and caboodle. We love them all. So then there was a article from Axios about they're going to send J.D. Vance, I guess. He's going to be the negotiator because he's been very skeptical about the war from the start. He really didn't, I guess, think it was a good idea, yada, yada, yada. So he's going to be the guy. He's going to go handle this. He's going to take care of it. This is the guy who acknowledged making up stories about immigrants eating pets, by the way. He's also the guy that in the past referred to the current president as Hitler. So I don't know. Not really taking it too seriously that he's the guy, like he's going to get it done. There was also something interesting I saw is that Marco Rubio correctly referred to the Iranians regime as religious fanatics. But then somebody posted a picture with everybody with Trump. They're standing around Trump and he's bowed and they're all praying over him. So, take that for what it's worth. There's an article, too, in the American Enterprise Institute. And remember, Persephone is going to post all of this, correct, Persephone? She gave me the big thumbs up. It says here that basically we're running out of weapons, that we have built our military to fight short wars with high-quality weapons, but that we're not prepared to fight long, drawn-out wars. It's hard for me to know. I mean, well, not hard. It's impossible, ultimately, for me to know if all of this stuff is true. I don't know. But the American Enterprise Institute is a hawkish neocon sort of, organization. And at the end, they're proposing a $450 billion spending package to, boost up the military. Persephone says that she put that post because I was disappointed that she never read the articles and Mark's having tech issues. Then she says, 'twas a joke. It was. Yes, it's true. We've also shot 3 of our own planes, and Trump was braggadocious about how well the pilots handled it. I don't know if bragging about shooting your own planes is something to be bragging about. Okay. Are there any questions in the audience? Have I missed any questions, Persephone? Because it is, after all, Open Question Friday, and the questions will really help the whole scenario here. I don't see any. Ian Gilmore wants to know, is talking about the really nuts thing he says impactful anymore? He said this cognitive test nonsense before. He'll say it again. It's just noise. Well, the problem, Ian, is other people may not have heard it. That's the first thing. Just not everybody has your level of knowledge or, hasn't seen the things you've seen. That's first. Secondly, the point of me including that was to go with the other stuff because it's a cumulative thing to demonstrate that our commander-in-chief is bonkers. I don't know how else to put it, but that's the issue here. Okay, oh yeah, so Persephone put it up here. Trump took the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. It's a 10 to 15 minute screening tool designed to detect mild cognitive impairment or early dementia. Should blackmail be legal? And what do I think about Hans Hermann Hoppe? That's kind of an out of nowhere question, Mr. Deagle. I'll answer it briefly. Soon. I want to just. So I don't know. Do you think that they need to have another $450 billion spent on weapons? The next topic we're going to delve into is going to be the debt. Do I think blackmail should be? I did ask for it. Blackmail should be legal. Well, now we're getting into Hoppe booted block out of the movement. No, I generally don't think blackmail should be legal. But I have to be honest with you, it's not something that I've thought about in depth. I haven't. Most of the topics that I talk about, I usually like to give them significant thought, judge them against a standard, see how it applies in different situations, and then draw a conclusion. This is not something I've thought about. I don't think that whether blackmail should be legal or not is the issue of the day. I don't think it's all that important. I believe Walter Block, the guy that's mentioned right there, advocated it in his book, Defending the Undefendable. Look, I like Professor Block. I've interviewed him. I've debated him. But on that, I think he's probably wrong, but I would really have to think about it more in depth. If that's something that people would like to hear discussed, I will give it the requisite effort. But I don't see a big demand to delve into that. As for Hans Hermann Hoppe, So the base of his view, right? The argumentation ethics. I have not gotten into the further down stuff too much. His covenant community, his critique of democracy. I think that his argumentation ethics is silly. I don't know how else to put it. I debated Stephan Kinsella, I don't know if you call him a disciple, on the very issue of argumentation ethics. I don't think it proves what they think it proves. I don't think it proves much of anything. I would take really a much longer thing than I'm going to do right now to really delve into what's wrong with it. But I'll just say this, that argumentation ethics is the idea that just by the fact of arguing, you're implying that you have self-ownership and that the other person does, and that you're committed to peaceful negotiations or peaceful discussion. So therefore, you can't argue that force or coercion, violence is okay would be a performative contradiction. The problem is, let's even say that I argue, but even if it did imply what they're saying, which is a big if, it implies only to you and me, or to the person I'm talking to. It doesn't imply that peace should be the governing standard for everybody. I can certainly argue, look, you shouldn't use force against me and I shouldn't use force against you, but those people over there are fair game. There's no contradiction there. It doesn't break down. It's just rationalism run amok. It's not very good. And also his idea that you treat public property as private property as the means to outlaw, basically outlaw immigration or to keep people out of the country. I think it breaks down rather quickly because then, if you think about it, for instance, just hypothetical example, I in my home, I can ban swearing. I can ban certain types of footwear. I can basically demand anything I want. It's my property. I can do what I want. So now on the public highway, can the government ban swearing on the public highway? Can the government dictate what you wear while you're driving your car? I mean, would people be okay with that? Would Hoppe be okay with that? Then the argument is, well, the American people pay for the taxes for the public property, therefore they have the right to say in it, which just boils down to you're saying it should be decided by vote, by majority vote. But yet he wrote a book called Democracy, the God That Failed. Seems to be problematic as well. It also breaks down because then you'd have to argue, given that roads, are primarily financed in states by state taxes. So as a resident of Connecticut, can then Massachusetts keep me out because I haven't paid for their roads? It really is not a very robust argument. He's got devoted followers that think he's great. They think he's the best thing going. I don't see it. I don't think so. So that's my take on Mr. Hoppe. Race Jacobson says, on the face of it, blackmail is a type of coercion or fraud. It's meant to use your mistakes to remove your free choice. I don't know that it's fraud. Because fraud entails deception, but blackmail doesn't. You might be able to make the coercion argument, Race, but the fraud argument, I think, is going to be a stretch. So that's my take there. Mr. Deagle, Mark Pellegrino has entered the studio. Let's see. Let's add him to the stage. Can you hear me now, brother? No. Okay. You can just sit there and nod your head and be handsome. I think there's an echo now. No. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. We cannot hear you. Are you on a plane? Hold on. Talk now. No. Yeah, there's a big... Reclusi says you're very quiet. By the way, we're now streaming on Twitch as well. I don't know what is going on with Mark. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know what's wrong with his phone. But whatever. He's here. Just stare at him. I think most people are here for his good looks anyway. What we could be handsome in the brain, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Whatever. Not a good joke. Okay, anyway, so Mr. Deagle says objectivists argue that libertarians are nihilists. And it seems to me that Hoppe is a poster child for that. Do I want to get in trouble here? Not really trouble. I think that a lot of objectivists, when they argue against libertarians, fight straw men. And I think there's plenty wrong with libertarianism, especially the anarchist branch. But I would like to see objectivists actually, if they're going to engage at all, to actually debate with libertarians or even just write, talk, do something to really, really address the arguments. For instance, address Roy Child's argument. Roy Child's argument was that, now he's since recanted, but whatever, he recanted before he died. Okay, see, Mr. Deagle just did the straw man thing that I'm talking about. And I'll tell you why in a second. But Roy Child's argument was that objectivism implies anarchy because of the initiation of force. That if the initiation of force is evil, you don't have the right to initiate force against somebody to keep them as part of your government or to stop them from setting up their own defense. I would like to see objectivists deal with that. I mean, I've dealt with it, but I would like to see other objectivists deal with it. Mr. Deagle says libertarians hate America. This to me is reminiscent of when Andy Bernstein says the left. And it's this all-encompassing thing, because not all libertarians hate America. Not all libertarians are anarchists. There's a guy on Facebook, he says the core of libertarianism is anarchy. When I point out to him, well, the term libertarian as applied to the people we're, talking about, or as used now, was first used in an article for the Foundation for Economic Education, not an anarchist organization, right? Reason Magazine is libertarian, not anarchist. Cato, libertarian, not anarchist. So, I just have a hard time. The Libertarian Party's nominee for president this time around, not an anarchist. So to say that they're all anarchists is just not right. And Ian Gilmore says not all libertarians hate America. Not all of them are that consistent. Robert Naser's awesome. He says trouble is all objectivists overgeneralize. That was great, but that's a good point. And so back to the inconsistency thing as the allegation from Ian Gilmore. Okay, write it out. Make the argument. I'm not trying to pick on Ian here, and I'm not trying to defend libertarians. Look, I've debated Michael Huemer, Stephan Kinsella, Walter Block. Did I say Michael Huemer? I'm not even sure. David Friedman. I've debated some very, very prominent libertarians. I'm not a libertarian. I disagree with them. No, this format is not conducive to that level of analysis, Ian. I'm not suggesting that you do that here, and maybe you've done it already. If you have, then you point it to us. I'm just saying that I run across this an awful lot, where it's libertarians are this or libertarians are that, and I just wonder, often it's a straw man argument. And I mean, if you're going to argue against it, you have to actually engage the arguments. For instance, how many folks have actually read Rothbard's Power and Market and engaged it? Or are objectivists prepared to, and I don't mean all, I'm just saying, are any objectivists out there prepared to offer a critique, for instance, of Man, Economy, and State, which in my view, by Rothbard, one of the best economics books ever written. Andy Bernstein is texting me. Okay. Aside from Andy Bernstein, or, critique his ethics of liberty. That's something that can be done. I just don't see how it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Intellectually robust to just say libertarians are inconsistent. I've read Peter Schwartz's article. I know what Peter Schwartz had to say about it, right? And when I read it, I find issues with his framing and things that he's claiming. I think there's truth to what he said. I think there's some things he got wrong. And I just think that if we want to be taken seriously as intellectuals, we need to offer more robust critiques of whatever it is we're critiquing, whether it be conservatism, libertarianism, Christianity, whatever. Mr. Deagle says it's like saying not all Christians are evil, which is true, but Christianity itself is evil and destructive. Well, the problem is with that argument, Mr. Deagle, is that if you ask me to define what a Christian is, I can do so very quickly. A Christian is somebody who accepts Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. I can also point to the fundamental text of Christianity, which would be the New Testament. So you have, and I can also point to the text from which it's derived from, the Old Testament, right? If I ask you right now, define libertarianism and tell me the one seminal text, I don't think you could do that. If you can, prove me wrong. But the guy on Facebook the other day told me if he could prove it, would I accept it? And I said, of course, I would accept it. But he never came back. Now, Ian Gilmore here says libertarian as a concept is probably too broad to be useful. You can't comment on it, argue about it, etc. You need to drill down to specific libertarians. I actually have posted in the past that libertarianism ultimately is not a useful concept because it tries to encompass too much. Which is just another reason why objectivism is not an open system. Because once it becomes an open system, then it loses all meaning. And then you don't even know what the hell people are talking about when they reference it. So Killers, Thieves, and Lawyers says someone needs to get Mark better headphones. Look, Mark is a billionaire. He's supposed to get his computer fixed. He never did that. Now he's got garbage headphones. Well, the problem with people who believe in the non-aggression principle or axiom is you're eliminating from the equation then David Friedman. So are we going to say David Friedman is not a libertarian? Ludwig von Mises was a classical liberal, which is been used as a synonym for libertarian. Milton Friedman, many call a libertarian. He certainly didn't believe in the non-aggressive axiom or principle. So to say that libertarian is that, you're eliminating all the utilitarian libertarians. So, I mean, it's just the issue is that their non-aggression axiom is not rooted in anything. So many libertarians go into crazy places. I agree that the people who say that non-aggression is an axiom or even start with the non-aggression principle are wrong badly. I've debated them on it. I've explained why they're wrong, but that's not every libertarian. And that's kind of my problem. Teresa Shanti 99 says, I'm just listening in, but this question is related to Michael's frustration with Dave Smith. Are you familiar with Eric Weinstein? He's the only one I've seen make some progress with Dave. I don't know I don't care really to make progress with Dave. I don't think Dave will ever debate me, but occasionally if I see him online and I see he's being a hypocrite, I'll call him out for it. So, that's my thing. Jenna Kleem says, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. There was actually a debate on the non-aggression principle between two libertarians. My friend Gene Epstein, who is not an anarchist, and David Friedman, who is an anarchist, and they debated the non-aggression principle. Friedman took the negative. Gene Epstein took the positive. Mr. Deagle says you can make a distinction between big L and small L libertarian. I don't even, if by big L you mean the Libertarian Party, then certainly you can, but that only refers to the Libertarian Party. Yes, it's an overly broad concept. That is a legitimate critique, a very, very legitimate critique, that it's overly broad. But once you say it's overly broad, okay, but then to say, well, libertarians do something, libertarians are all this, but it's overly broad, well, you seem to have a contradiction there. Race Jacobson says Dave will never debate someone who can clearly beat him. He underestimated Coleman Hughes, but he knows you can destroy him. Maybe so. Maybe so. I don't know. I really don't like... my friend of mine is asking me to send them my baby picture. But anyway, so what was I going to say? I don't even know. I lost my dogs are, my dogs are howling now. I got to tell them to shut up. Hold on. They're not listening. Ian Gilmore says you can use it, but you need to use it with the right qualifiers. Some libertarians, these libertarians, etc., not just blanket libertarians. Ian Gilmore, I think, hit the nail on the head. Mr. Deagle says, by big L, I mean more consistent anarchists. Small L are people like Milton Friedman. Okay, that is completely arbitrary, dude. I'm sorry to say it, but I mean, that's what you mean. But okay, I mean something different. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that becomes useful at all. You know what I mean? So that's my take here. Let the dog sing. Yeah, I guess. People are very sloppy with their language, and over time it corrupts your thinking. Yes, it does. Somebody says, can you say this? Killers, thieves, and lawyers on, what the hell is this? Twitch says, can you say the same thing about big O and little O objectivists? It depends what you're referring to. If you're referring to the philosophy of objectivism, then it's a capital O because it's a proper noun. It's the name of the philosophy of Ayn Rand. However, the term objectivist actually predates Ayn Rand. So if you're referring to that, it would be something clearly different. When I was a young man, I took the time to study abroad. Robert Naser rocks. Persephone's pissed, though. She's making faces and shaking her fist. So that's it. Mark, can you talk? Say something so we can see if we can maybe hear you. No. What if you unplug the headphones? Unplug them. So why could I hear you before but not now? Persephone, can you resend him the link? Oh, she already did. Okay, so that's it. So Mark's just going to sit here and look pretty. That's going to be it. Oh, Mark, please don't go anywhere. I got to talk to you about something after the show. Teresa says, who's asking for a baby pic? It'd be fun to see baby pics for both of you guys. Megan Ribbon says, hey, Mike, would it be helpful if we sent you articles of interest? Yeah. You're great at finding lots of interesting articles, so I don't want to overwhelm you. And Mark and Persephone. It's good that you put those two in parentheses on that one. Thank you. I appreciate that, Megan. But sure, I mean, anybody's welcome to send me an article or two or whatever. I can't guarantee we're going to use it, so I don't want anybody to feel bad. I mean, whatever. You want to feel bad about something like that, that's your business. You shouldn't. But sure, I would love it. Send me stuff. I'm constantly asking for topics of interest of the people in the audience. So the national debt. No, I just clicked the wrong thing. Again, by the way, there's also a form on the website where you can submit things, and that website is thecapitalistcorner.org. Persephone's giving me the old humdinger with the fingers there. She's doing this here. So, anyways, let me get to this. I don't want to see that. Oh, this is just one more thing I wanted to share. I'm going to send this video to Persephone so that she can give it to me to post. Or so she can post it and I can repost it. It's a statement from Marco Rubio. I just sent it, Persephone. Please get it up here quickly. I need snappy actions. Mark, why do you have an airplane behind you? Oh, it's a photo? It's just a photograph. We are going to talk about the national debt. I promise you. I just want to make sure that I get to this first. Mark, did you share this, by the way? He did. Okay. Mr. Deagle says there's an article on masculinity and femininity by Objectivists. I'm interested in your opinion on it. There is an article. Send it to me, Mr. Deagle. Send it. Today, by the way, on Everyday Ethics at 2:30 p.m., we are going to talk about sex and romantic relationships. For you ladies out there, I know when you hear me talking about that, you're going to want to tune in, but I appreciate it, but it's going to be really a philosophical, moral discussion. Persephone, are you getting this up here? I sent it. What do you mean? What are you making? Mr. Boeing was curious, Ray says. Yeah, no, he's at the airport, though, but he said he was in his hotel. All right, look at this.
Without the use of troops on the ground, boots on the ground by part of the
That's a tactical military question. I'm not going to, speculate on what it would take. It could be open tomorrow if Iran stops threatening global shipping, which is an outrage and a violation of international law for all these countries that care about international law. They should be doing something about it.
Okay, so I'm confused. Does he care about international law? Because he said for all these countries that do. So should Iran be obeying international law, or is international law garbage? I don't know. I find it very problematic. Like, I personally would never make an argument based on international law, right? Unless the United States has signed, a treaty or signed onto an agreement or some such thing, international law means nothing to me. So I won't cite it. But I wouldn't then, when it suits my purposes, for instance, I wouldn't say, oh, well, look at when the Iranians attacked, the Marines in Beirut. It was a violation of international law. I would never, ever, ever make that argument, because I understand then the next time when someone says America violates international law, then my response would be, I don't care about international law. And then they're going to say, well, what about here? It seems that consistency, a lack of hypocrisy, is lost on many of the people in power. And Mark seems to agree with me. And I don't think Mark is a fan of international law. He says, no way, Jose. All right, so there was an article about the political, this was in the Independent, the political incentives behind America's national. Mr. Deagle sent this article to the Q&A portion of the website. Can you send it to me, Persephone? I'll read it before the 2:30 show, and then maybe we can use that kind of as a kickoff point or some such thing. So the article starts off and it says, excessive spending has become ingrained among the majority of U.S. politicians. Year after year, over half of all representatives and senators vote to keep the federal gravy train going. Worse, they all know it's real and growing problem. Then they go ahead and do it anyway, again and again. And it talks about there being an incentive problem because there's no consequences to keep expanding the debt. They don't get voted out of office. They just don't care. And most people, it would seem, just want more goodies. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what you would do. But, in relation to the debt, and then you consider, that article that I read, that I referenced from the AEI, where they want to spend $400 billion on weapons. And we have a costly war perhaps ahead of us. I don't know, because I don't know what Trump is going to do. So I was just looking into some people on this. I looked up what Milton Friedman thought about the subject. Milton Friedman argued that the primary risk of excessive national debt is not bankruptcy, but rather the underlying government spending that necessitates it, which siphons resources from the private sector. So that's a common concern, is that you're taking resources from the private sector, right? You're diminishing capital, you're diminishing investment, and you're siphoning away from the private sector. There's an article from John Kasich and Alan Greenspan. So Alan Greenspan says the long-term dangers of excessive national debt. He talks about a debt time bomb. It could lead to a fiscal crisis. He says it crowds out savings. Because what happens is you lead to a rise in domestic interest rates by going into debt so people are less apt to borrow money, less apt to invest. Let's see here. He says that for Greenspan, he says tax cuts are, he prefers spending cuts over tax hikes. He says you need entitlement reform, budget rules, something new. Thomas Sowell, the wonderful Thomas Sowell, he argues that excessive national debt is a form of fiscal irresponsibility that acts as a false saver, allows governments to live behind their means while placing an unsustainable burden on future generations, argues that the debt ceiling is ineffective. Of course it is. He says ultimately it leads to inflation and higher taxes because governments will monetize the debt. They'll try to print their way out of it. It also leads to government dependency was another problem he had with it. There's an excellent article in here I have too about both Mises and Rothbard argued against the national debt. And even Claude. So I asked Claude what Claude thought were the problems with the national debt. This is what Claude says. It says, crowding out private investment. When governments borrow heavily, they compete with private borrowers for available capital, driving up interest rates. It makes it more expensive for businesses to invest and expand. The debt service burden, because you have to pay the interest on the debt. That's money that can't be spent elsewhere. It puts inflationary pressure because now the Fed's going to print money. Credit risk, intergenerational inequity because it takes money from future generations. So the bottom line is this debt is a problem. And after going through all that this morning, there was an article from the aforementioned Cato instance. Mr. Deagle says Gemini is Google, right, Persephone? Yeah, I did. Most of that was from Gemini, Mr. Deagle. I don't just use Claude. I use them all. There's 4 of them that I use. I use Grok, I use ChatGPT, I use Claude, and I use Gemini. And when they contradict with each other, I look into it further. I'm more inclined to think that they're onto something when all 4 agree, but especially when they cite sources you can look into, very, very credible. Killers, thieves, and lawyers says ChatGPT sucks. So the article here is titled 88 trillion unfunded entitlement obligation Washington keeps ignoring. So there was a recent financial report. It says Social Security and Medicare account for more than the government's entire 79.6 trillion long-term funding gap. Basically, without Social Security and Medicare, there would be a surplus. The problem is, and they argue here, Social Security and Medicare must be reformed. It doesn't seem people are in any way interested in reforming these. People, as in general, want this stuff. They don't connect the dots when you end up with 2% growth. When the economy is not expanding, when jobs aren't growing, they don't see that. So they don't see the connection. So they just maybe don't care. That's the economic, case. But again, you're funding a system with tax dollars that are stolen from people. You're then funding future, you're taxing future dollars to pay for present things. So you're taxing people who can't even vote for this right now. No choice in this. So we need to make, in my view, as proponents of capitalism, maybe I should have saved this for the capitalist start of the day, but hell with it, I'll go with it. We need to be able to make both the moral argument that it's not the government's job to steal money from some people to breed entitlement in others. It's an immoral policy. It's not their money. It's yours. The only purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and property. It is not to initiate force to siphon off a portion of your property to pay for services for others. We need to consistently, I believe, make both our arguments, though. We need to understand that the economics do not work. It is actually not in people's interest to have the government behave this way. It is not in their interest to have the government increase the debt. Now, I'm going to bring on Persephone just for a second here. Well, hello, Persephone.
Good morning.
Let me switch this here. Look at that. Persephone, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on everything we've talked about today? I'm curious. Just a quick synopsis.
Life is tiring. I'm tired of all of this. I'm tired of all of the news. I'm tired of Trump.
All right, we have the great analysis from Persephone now. She's just tired of it. She's tired of everybody. We do have some good answers yesterday, Persephone. Mark and I get bupkis when we ask the questions, but Persephone has an abundance of answers here. So let me just scooch on over. I like the word scooch. I think it's underused.
Yeah, Robert Nacier says Trump fatigue is real. It is. I'm so tired of hearing all of the dumb shit that Trump does. And then everybody's like, oh, 4D chess, 4D. No. Pigeon shitting on a chessboard.
Mark liked that one. All right. So Ian Gilmore says, and this is usually attributed to Groucho Marx, outside of a dog, a book is man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. And he says, a paraphrase from Abraham Lincoln, how many legs does a dog have if you call the tail a leg? 4. Calling a tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. I like that one. Jenna Kleem says, no one is actually dead until the ripples they cause in the world die away. That's from Terry Pratchett. And Ironheart says, not my favorite, but he does like the quote from Nietzsche, God is dead. And hedonism is no fun from Robert Nacer, I should say. I'm looking at the CH over here. That's from Richard Bach. And then from Richard Bachman, from Jenna Kleem, the joy of living is just the joy of survival. Capitalist thought of the day is, what do I want to make it? Capitalist thought of the day. I am actually going to go back to Persephone's $50 Rand gift that was from earlier. And she says, the size of your success is measured by how you handle disappointment along the way. I actually posted something about this on Facebook this morning. So when I was 21, I had just been sentenced to 33 years in prison, and my father came to visit me. And I said to him, no matter what, even if I have to do day for day, if I serve the whole sentence, I'm going to be okay. Now, I didn't know. I probably didn't even believe it at the time. I don't remember. It's 28 years ago. But I was right. I was going to be okay. I ended up serving 25 years, and I'm more than okay. All those disappointments along the way that Persephone talks about, getting denied appeals, getting denied sentence review, getting denied my habeas corpus filing, my mother's death, getting transferred. A lot of things happened along the way. And I was okay. And I got out. And I'm more than okay. I met a wonderful woman. I planned on spending the rest of my life with her. She passed away. I'm still okay. I'm better than okay. There are things in life that cannot be overcome, and I do not want to dismiss that. There's things that simply people cannot handle. Most things, however, especially that we in the United States are going to handle, or at least in Western countries are going to go through, are handleable. We need to learn from them, we need to grow from them, and we need to just keep moving, keep going forward, keep setting goals, keep living our best lives. That is how, or at least it's one way that we can make capitalism work. Now, Persephone, you asked the question. I can't do everything.
Okay. What's a habit that you would like to cultivate in yourself?
I like that. What is a habit you would like to cultivate in yourself? I like
Answer
that.
on YouTube and go follow on Twitch and find us on Spotify.
Yes, Twitch, Spotify, YouTube, do it all. Answer the questions, like, share, subscribe everywhere. We will be back Monday. Tomorrow, although Mark is not going to be there, I will be doing Self-Made Soul all by my lonesome. And, we'll see how that goes. It usually goes pretty well. We're going to be discussing the hierarchy of needs from Abraham Maslow. Self-actualization should be great. Remember to tune in today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Everyday Ethics. I think we're going to have a great discussion on romantic relationships, sex, and masculinity and femininity. Okay, Race Jacobs says they're not valid ethical concepts, but they are valid aesthetic concepts. Okay. Either way, until Monday, remember to always check your premises. And Mark, give them the... Thanks, everybody.